This is Terry Wager. The date today is August 20th, 2015. I'm going to be recording this vlog. This vlog is going to be about recognizing the signs of a sting operation. I have been a victim of police/county sheriffs / civilian sting operations ever since I was 6 years old. I was unaware of it at the time. I was too young at the time to really be aware of really anything. I was only 6 years old at the time. I thought this might be a good idea to make this vlog to explain to people how to recognize sting operations and how to recognize whether or not you're a target of a sting operation by pointing out the signs of it. I know for the most part, normal average people are completely unaware of sting operations or how they work or the type of people that are sting operatives and therefore do not recognize the signs of sting, and generally for the most part are completely oblivious to sting operations. I know for a fact that sting operations are extremely common, and that news media heavily goes out of its way to hide and suppress and to look the other way on sting operations. And because of this, normal people tend to be 100% unaware of sting operations and unaware of how sting operations work. And quite often, many normal people are witnesses to sting operations and yet are unaware of it because they don't recognize what they're witnessing as a sting. So I decided I'm going to record this vlog as a way of trying to explain it to people how to recognize a sting and how to recognize the tactics and the traits and the warning signs of a sting. Normal people tend to live normal, ordinary lives. And normal people usually are people that, work 9 to 5. They're struggling to pay their bills. They have life issues that they have to deal with. And, they have family they try to stay connected to and friends they try to stay connected to. And they're just living their ordinary, normal lives. And for the most part, they have the attitude of live and let live. And so normal people tend to not bother other people or to overly ingratiate themselves into other people's lives, because normal people already have busy lives and have very little time to devote in keeping track of current events or to keep track of world news or to keep track of local news. At best, normal people will watch a half hour of local news on TV. Normal people will watch, at best, a half hour of world news on TV. And that's about the length of time that normal people are usually willing to give in keeping track of, essentially the world as far as news goes. And you have to understand that normal people have busy lives. They tend to have a live and let live mentality, and for the most part, they don't bother other people. Normal people don't go out of their way to fuck over other people, and normal people don't go out of their way to ingratiate themselves onto strangers. Normal people have very busy lives and they're just trying to live their life, and they're essentially living their lives with the attitude of live and let live. You leave me alone, I leave you alone kind of mentality. And which is fine. That's how normal people generally are. Normal people have busy lives. They have their they're trying to do their own thing. They have their own interests, and normal people don't usually. They don't take the extreme one way or another way. That's like they're trying to live their lives, and they'll let you live your life, and that's how normal people are. Well, sting operatives are the exact opposite of that. Those people that are sting ops, they don't have the mentality at all of live and let live. They have the exact opposite attitude. They are the type of people that target people, and they quite often will spend a great deal of time trying to either screw over their targets, or they'll spend a great deal of time trying to ingratiate themselves into their target's life, or a combination of both. More often than not, it tends to be a combination of both. One of the beginning signs that you of a sting operation, I'm going to explain a scenario that I'm sure many normal people that are completely oblivious to sting ops have probably experienced this and just never recognized it as being targeted by a sting. Have you ever moved into a neighborhood, whether it be a house or an apartment, and some of the neighbors surrounding you are heavily trying to ingratiate themselves into your life? So much so that it kind of seems weird. They don't seem normal to you. They seem a little weird or a little odd because they seem overly nice to the point where it just doesn't come across to you as normal. How many people have experienced that? I'm sure quite a few people have experienced that. That is one of the signs that those people, that's one of the beginning signs, literally. Those type of people that do this usually tend to be sting ops. They try to ingratiate themselves into your life so that they can have the ability to change or affect your life. And I'll get into the reasons why later, but right now I'm just trying to explain literally the beginning stages of being targeted in a sting. There will be people in your neighborhood that will take special interest in you, so much so that they will go out of their way to communicate with you, to have conversations with you, to ingratiate themselves into your life. They might even bake cookies and bring cookies over to you. Does that seem normal? Does that sound like what? Does that sound like something normal people do? That sounds very nice, doesn't it? That sounds very innocent. That sounds actually sweet, doesn't it? That's how sweet of the neighbors to bake us some cookies. That was awfully nice of them. They seem like really nice people, but guess what? Do they seem normal? Do they seem normal to you? I guarantee you they will not come across to you as normal. You may not be able to put a finger on it as to what the deal is with these people, but you will have the feeling that gee, there's something odd about these people. There's something weird about these people. They seem nice enough, but there's something weird about them, and that feeling of them being weird or odd, you will notice, you will have that feeling from these people. You won't think of them as criminals. You won't perceive them as criminals. You'll just think, well, gee, they seem like nice people. But there will be something about them that will come across to you as odd. Now, that is quite literally the first warning sign that you're going to get. Your own instincts will tell you that there's something weird. There's something odd about these people. You won't be able to put your finger on it. You may not be able to explain it to your family or to your friends. You might say to your family, well, yeah, the neighbors brought over cookies. Wasn't that nice of them? You won't be able to shake that feeling that there's something odd about them, but you don't know how to explain it, and you don't even know how to explain it to your family or to your friends. But they will come across as weird to you. You will get that feeling that they're weird, but you won't be able to explain why. You just don't have enough information about those people, and you may not be aware enough of these type of people in order to explain them. So you will walk. When all's said and done, you will have that feeling that these people, there's something weird about them. You will definitely have that feeling. You will not perceive them as criminals. You will not perceive them as people that are organized in an evil manner with malicious intent. You will not perceive them in that manner at all. But they will definitely give you the impression that there's something weird about them because they just don't come across as normal. That is quite literally the very first signs that you're dealing with people that are sting ops. You have to understand that sting ops are not normal people at all. They have an agenda. They operate in a very how do I explain it? They've lived their whole lives targeting people in sting operations. They spend their entire lives doing this shit to people. Sting ops can't stop targeting people. They live for it. For them, it's a sport. They treat it like it's a sport. They don't need an excuse, really, to target a person at all. They'll invent an excuse just because they're bored. So if sting ops take an interest in you, well then usually the beginning signs of a sting operation, the moment you become targeted by it, is they'll try to ingratiate themselves into your life, and yes, you will come away from this experience of these people with the feeling that there's something weird about them, and usually at the same time, bad things are going to start happening to you. Like for instance, people will be planning stolen property on your property. Or fires might be set near where you live. Or you might start hearing about break-ins near where you live. And maybe your own vehicle might become sabotaged in some fashion, way, shape, or form. Where somebody might be stealing your gas out of your gas tank, or somebody might be letting air out of your tires, and it's just causing more aggravation and more headaches for you. Usually, these two things usually occur around the same time, and normally the target, the victim, the target, doesn't recognize it well enough to realize that the very people that are trying to ingratiate themselves into their lives are the very people that are causing these disasters that are screwing over that person. So the very people that are bringing you the cookies and trying to, act like friendly neighbors that are trying to win you over as a friend, you don't make the connection that these are the very same people that are tampering with your vehicle and letting air out of your tires, or they're siphoning out the gas out of your car, or they're planning stolen property on your property. You won't make that connection. And this is one of the reasons why I'm pointing this out to people, because this is what was happening to me and my family in 1971. I was only 6 years old at the time, and me and my family became targeted by the Multnomah County Sheriffs, and by some of their civilian relatives who happen to be the Dunham family. The Dunham family were neighbors of ours. They lived 2 houses away. There were just 2 houses. They lived 2 houses away from where we lived. Now, I've just quite literally explained how they began targeting me and my family. Now, my family, my mother and my father did not recognize at the time that they were a target of a sting. Me and my older brother, we did not recognize either that we were a target of a sting. We were completely oblivious to covert crimes. We were completely oblivious to organized people targeting people. We didn't even know that kind of thing even existed in this country. So we were the only warning sign we had in the beginning stages of this was, well, it's either something odd about the Dunham family. There's something weird about them. We can't quite put our finger on it as to what it is, but they're most definitely not normal people. My initial impression of the Dunham family was they seem nice, but they're weird. And that was my initial impression of them right from the beginning. I couldn't explain it. I was only 6 years old at the time. I didn't even have the vocabulary to even use to refer to them as even weird, because at the age of 6, I didn't even know what the word weird even meant. I didn't have a large enough vocabulary in order to use descriptive words to even describe the Dunham family. I didn't even learn what the definition of the word weird was until when I just recently turned 7 years old back in 1972. And that's the moment I learned about that word weird. I immediately associated that word with the Dunham family. Was I perceiving them as criminals? No. Was I perceiving them as sting ops? No. Was there something odd about them? Oh, definitely. I didn't have any way to describe or explain to anybody. Well, my family, everybody in my family actually perceived them as odd or unusual or weird. But none of us perceived them as criminals or organized people that target people or stalk people or anything like that. We didn't perceive them that way. Not to mention, we didn't know they were connected to the Multnomah County Sheriffs either. They're relatives to people in the Multnomah County. The Dunham family are relatives to the people in the Multnomah County Sheriffs. So we did not know that then. The same time the Dunham family was ingratiating themselves to my family was the same time bad things started happening to me and my family. The same time they were baking us cookies and trying to befriend my mother and so that they could have access to me is also the same time that they were planning stolen property on our property, and they were sabotaging our vehicles and letting the airs out of our tires, and they were siphoning out our gas out of our cars. The same time these neighbors were ingratiating themselves to me and my family was the same time a lot of bad things were happening. Now, I need to explain. Normal people don't understand the mindset or the motives of sting ops and don't understand why would people even go to this kind of trouble. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to try to help you to better understand sting ops and their mindsets. Normal people quite often like to have pets. Not always, but there's a lot of normal people that like to have pets. And when people have pets, a lot of people that have pets, like a dog, for instance, they may have the interest of training that dog some tricks. So the owner of the dog will spend 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes per day trying to train that dog tricks. And for the most part, it's a hobby of that dog owner to do that. And it's a special interest of that dog owner to take this little bit of time to devote towards training this dog per day to train his dog to do tricks. Now that sounds very innocent, isn't it? That is innocent, and it's a hobby, and the dog owner is treating it as a hobby and as a special interest, something that they're interested in doing. They don't spend all day working on it. They just spend 5, 10, 15 minutes here and there on it, and they take joy in they enjoy training dogs to do tricks. Well, a sting op treats the targeting of their target the same damn way a dog owner treats teaching a dog new tricks. For sting ops, it's a hobby. They enjoy targeting people. They enjoy screwing over their targets. They enjoy setting up their targets. They may devote 5, 10, 15 minutes a day to it because it's one of their special interests. It's one of their hobbies. They may not devote the entire day to it, but they'll devote 5, 10, 15 minutes a day to it. And it's one of their hobbies. It's one of their special interests. Now, if you look at it from that perspective, you'll have a much easier understanding as to how sting ops develop an interest in targeting people and what their mindsets are when they target people. They don't devote necessarily a solid day to it at all. They'll devote 5 minutes to it, 10 minutes to it, 15, 20 minutes to it. Maybe once a week they'll devote a couple hours to it at most. If they want to ingratiate themselves into your life, they'll devote 5, 10 minutes to it to try to befriend you. But at the same time, they'll devote 5 minutes, 10 minutes to planting stolen property on your property or to let out the air out of your tire. All those activities does not take long. But it only takes them, 30 seconds they can let the air out of your tires. Well, how much and how easy is that? That's extremely easy, and they usually grin and smirk while they do that. So they obviously enjoy doing that shit to people. So how much aggravation does that cause the target? Well, the target has to devote a lot more than 30 seconds to get the tire in working order again. The target has to actually pull out a pump, and it has to actually pump up the tire. So the target has to devote like a half hour or more and go through a great deal more labor in correcting the problem than the sting op goes through in causing the problem. You can kind of think of it as trolling the target, in a sense. For the most part, that's essentially what it is. The sting ops are trolling their target. They're causing their target a great deal of pain and anguish and frustration and loss of time and a lot of aggravation. And generally, the sting ops take great delight in doing this shit to people. These two signs are the signs where the neighbors are trying to ingratiate, and they will come across as odd. That will be your first warning sign. If your instincts tell you there's something odd about this person, you should trust your instincts. You may not, your intellect, your intelligence may not be able to pinpoint why you have your instincts say they're weird or odd. But your instinct, your gut instincts is telling you there's something strange about these people. There's something odd about them. There's something weird about them. More likely than not, you won't be able to pinpoint what that is. And the reason why is because they're sting ops outright. And of course, normal people know zero about sting ops. And that's the reason why your intellect, and you could be a very intelligent person, but still could be completely oblivious to the fact that they're sting-offs. And the reason why normal people don't recognize sting-offs is because news media and your school system and your government in general, they go way out of their way to hide and conceal sting operations from the general public. So people, average normal people, do not recognize the signs of a sting. They can bear witness to a sting flat out occurring and be completely oblivious to the fact that it is, in fact, a sting operation and will not recognize it as such. Now, I'm basically giving you the beginning warning signs of a sting. When sting ops take an interest in their target, they go out of their way to ingratiate themselves to their target so that they can change and affect their target's life. The targets usually do not view this behavior as criminal or organized. They just view it as odd, weird, and just leave it at that. And don't perceive these people as criminals at all. And quite more often than not, usually bad things that fuck over the target will usually coincide at the same time that these people are trying to ingratiate themselves into your life by being overly friendly. Your instincts will tell you their behavior seems overly exaggerated. They seem overly nice. It's almost as though they're just performing. Your gut instinct will tell you there's something wrong. But you will, more likely than not, you won't have enough information to be able to peg them immediately as a sting-off, unfortunately. Me and my entire family in 1971, when we got targeted by a sting, we didn't recognize the signs of it. The signs were there, but we just weren't recognizing it as a sting. We knew there was something odd about the Dunham family. We couldn't really put our finger on it. We couldn't really explain it. And when all the bad things were happening to us, we didn't link this to the Dunham family at all. We should have, but we didn't. We thought they were just two separate incidents, two separate things that are not connected. That was because that's logic. That's what our logic was telling us. Our instincts were telling us something else, but we couldn't understand what our instincts was trying to tell us. We knew there was something odd about the Dunham family, but we couldn't put our finger on it. We had no way to verbally describe it to each other, and we didn't have enough information on sting operations to recognize the signs of a sting. So I'm trying to help out other people and educate other people into recognizing the beginning stages. Now, I've not given you that doesn't sound like enough, and it's not enough. Everything I've just explained is not enough, but it is the beginning, literally the beginning stages that you are being targeted. The fact that the sting ops have an interest in you and they're going out of their way in trying to affect change in your life, that's the beginning. That's literally the beginning stages, and it's usually when they've taken first interest in you. So you listen to your instincts. Trust your instincts. Don't trust your intellect as much because you're simply uninformed. When it comes to sting operations, normal people know virtually nothing about sting operations. And so don't trust your intellect so much as you do your instincts. Trust your instincts. If your instincts tell you there's something odd or weird about these people, no matter how nice they seem, if your instincts tell you there's something weird about them, have nothing
to do with them. Nothing to do with them. Don't allow them to keep going to your door, knocking at your door to be overly nice and friendly. Don't go out of your way to piss them off, but just make it known. Just make it known that you could really care less about whatever interests they have, and you have no interest in actually being friends or being acquainted with them. And just curtly, say you have a good day. Just shut the door on them. That kind of seems rude, but guess what? You need these people out of your life. Don't tolerate their pretenses. Don't tolerate their street theater performances. Don't allow them to embed themselves into your life. Because if they do, and if you actually think, well, you're friends with these people, if you think, well, you can become friends with these people, well, they'll act friendly, and they'll act like you're friends, but they're not. They'll befriend you, and the only reason they're trying to ingratiate themselves onto you and to befriend you is so that they can affect and change your life in a way that literally and utterly destroys you. When the Dunham family was doing this to my family, they were doing this with the intent of having access to me, and they were using me in a sting operation to frame my parents. I was only 6 years old at the time, and I was completely oblivious to what was going on. And the Dunham family befriended themselves to my mother. And after they befriended themselves to my mother, they told my mother, well, gee, we're taking our kids to the movie theaters. We were wondering if we could take your son along with. And my mother thought, well, that seems innocent enough, doesn't it? So my mother agreed, thinking, no, there's nothing wrong with that. So the Dunham family started taking me to the movie theaters. I'm only 6 years old at the time. My vocabulary is extremely limited, and I'm unable, because of my age, I'm unable to relate to my parents what they were doing with me. They were taking me to see the most inappropriate movies you could ever fucking imagine. They were taking me to see, almost every movie they took me to see was movies that had rape scenes, murder scenes, boob scenes, strangulation scenes. And they made me sit alone in that theater. And they were snapping photogenic photos of me while I'm sitting in this theater by myself. And they're subjecting me to these movies. Now, it was the Dunham family and the Multnomah County Sheriffs that were doing this. And they were doing this for the purpose of framing my mother as a pedophile. One of the movies they took me to was the movie Basket Case. So that should give you an example of the type of movies the sting ops and the Multnomah County, the civilian sting ops and the Multnomah County Sheriffs were subjecting me to. Now, keep in mind, they went out of their way to ingratiate themselves into my family's lives. They were baking cookies, bringing cookies over to us. They were bringing their leftover meals over to us. This is the kind of shit that they were doing, trying to ingratiate themselves into our lives. Darlene Dunham, the mother of the Dunham family, she was quite literally acting like Aunt Bee in the Andy Griffith TV series, where she's trying to act like a friendly next door neighbor that likes to bake cookies and stuff. That's how she was behaving and acting in order to ingratiate herself to my mother. And once they had access to me, they were subjecting me to the most god-awful fucking movies you could ever imagine. And I was only 6 years old and too young at the time to understand what's going on. I'm unaware that even that crimes are even taking place. I was unaware that what they were doing was illegal. They were subjecting me to the most god-awful, horrible movies you could ever imagine. And they were making me sit alone in a theater. And they were snapping photogenic photos of me while I'm sitting alone in this theater watching these god-awful fucking movies. Now, I never forgot the movies they were taking me to. I never forgot the fact they were snapping photogenic photos of me. Because I was only 6 years old, I didn't understand why are they doing it, and I didn't perceive it as a criminal activity. I just perceived them as weird or odd, strange. I knew nothing about covert crime. I knew nothing about sting operations, and I'm not perceiving it as such because of it. They were doing all this for the purpose of setting my mother up as a pedophile. And they were doing all this. They spent literally a year doing the staging. And then after a year of this shit, that's when they started inviting my mother to come along with. And when my mother came along with, then we would go see Disney movies. And ironically, the mother of the Dunham family, she was trying to get my mother's attention, to get my mother to look over on the left side of the theater, and to look over on the left side of the theater, inside the theater. And when my mother was looking over on the left side of the theater, that's when this county sheriff officer in plain clothing was snapping photogenic photos of us. And this time, my mother is sitting directly next to me. So they basically ingratiated themselves into our lives for the sole purpose of causing change and affecting our lives. And by ingratiating themselves into my family's lives, they gained access to me, and they were using me in their sting operation to set up my mother. And because they ingratiated themselves into my family's lives, they gained access to me, and look what they subjected me to. And then because they ingratiated and befriended themselves to my mother, they tricked and manipulated my mother into coming along so that they could snap photogenic photos of my mother sitting next to me in the theater. They spent an entire year taking me to see inappropriate movies and snapping photogenic photos of me when I'm sitting alone in the theater. And then they invite my mother to come along, and then we watch a Disney movie, and here they are drawing my mother's attention to look over on the left side of the theater, while a county sheriff officer on the right side of the theater is snapping photogenic photos of me and my mother. So now I just gave you an example as to why the sting ops take their time to ingratiate themselves to their targets, because they can greatly affect their targets' lives in a negative way and actually get their targets into incriminating situations or into situations that can utterly destroy their target. Now, this went on for a year, but you have to understand that they weren't taking me to the movie theaters every single day. They did this like once every 2 weeks. So they're not devoting a substantial amount of time. Over a great deal of length of time this went on. But in the actual work they're putting into it is only a couple hours once every 2 weeks. That's it. That's it. But because they were able to ingratiate themselves into our lives by acting overly friendly and by winning my mother over as a friend, they were able to cause this to happen. And they did a substantial amount of staging. And it was all for photogenic photo purposes. They're trying to build a case. And, everybody nowadays, the year is 2015, everybody knows about Photoshop. Everybody knows that in this day and age that, people can Photoshop pretty much anything. Well, back in 1971, 1972, nobody knew anything about Photoshopping anything. Well, back in 1971, 1972, law enforcement already had the power and ability to Photoshop. And that's the reason why they were subjecting me to all these bad movies. They didn't, Photoshop program didn't exist, but the technology for them to do shit with photos, law enforcement had that ability in the 70s. And this is the reason why they were taking me to see these bad movies and making me sit alone in the theater. And they made me sit in the same seat each and every time. And then when they invited my mother to come along, they're still making me sit in the same seat, and they made my mother sit next to me. And each and every time they were snapping photogenic photos. So they were trying, through the use of photogenic photos, they were trying to set my mother up as a pedophile. And they built up to this. They built up to it. And they accomplished this by simply ingratiating themselves into my family's lives so that they could have direct control and effect over our lives. They took complete advantage of the fact that I was only 6 at the time and knew nothing about covert crime. I knew nothing about sting operations. I did not even perceive at the time what they were doing was a criminal or was organized crime. I didn't even perceive it as them committing crimes. My only warning and perception that I had of this activity was, these people are weird. Why are they doing this? Why do they make me sit in the same seat each and every time they make me sit in the theater? And why do they make me sit alone? And why is some dude always snapping a photogenic photo in my direction every time they take me to the movie theaters? I didn't perceive any of it as a crime. I perceived it all as weird, unusual, odd, strange. I perceived these people as weird and strange from the very beginning, but didn't perceive them as criminals. Didn't perceive them as organized criminals, and I didn't realize they were connected to the Multnomah County Sheriffs. I didn't realize. Nobody in my family realized either. I have on my laptop computer screen here a movie that is paused. I'm not going to play the movie because that would be a copyright violation. FBI would be all pissy about it. I really could give a rat's ass if FBI is pissy about it. Matter of fact, I would be more than willing to actually air these movies on my YouTube channel and just say, screw you, fuck you, FBI. I really don't give a fuck about your courts or your fucking opinion. But I'm showing this movie. I want people to see this movie. This is an old Western movie. I think it was made back in 1937. It stars Bob Steele, and the name of the movie is Paroled to Die. I'm pointing this movie out to people, I want normal average people to look up this movie and get a copy of it. And the reason why is this movie is nothing but one solid sting operation. It's nothing but sting operations. As a matter of fact, it completely demonstrates and shows that sting operations were in full practice and were commonly and openly used in the 30s in the United States of America, in the 1930s. It was made in 1937, and this movie is nothing but sting operations. As a matter of fact, I counted about 27 different sting tactics that are in this movie. Now, keep in mind, this movie's a Western, so they're riding around on horses and whatnot. But just, if you want to relate to, don't think of the movie as a Western, because it's not. It's not a Western, really. It's a sting operation movie that's just set in the time frame when everybody used horses to travel around with. But it's nothing but this movie is nothing but this movie should be named as, instead of being labeled as a Western, it should be labeled as a sting operation. Because that's all this movie is a sting operation. That's it. That's all this movie is. It's just one long sting operation. Don't think of it as the good guys fighting the bad guys. Think of it as two separate opposing sting operations, both using sting tactics to target one another. Look at it from that perspective, because that's essentially what is taking place in this movie. The good guys are sting ops, and they're organized, and they're targeting the bad guys. And the bad guys are sting ops, and they're organized, and they're using sting ops to target the good guys. So basically, in viewing this movie, don't look at it as a Western. Don't look at it as good guys going after bad guys. Just look at it as two opposing sting operations targeting one another, and they're just using non-stop sting tactics in the targeting of one another. From beginning, middle to end, this movie is one solid sting operation. I wouldn't be surprised. Back in the 30s, in the golden, you have to understand, talking movies in the 30s, that's the golden era of movies. That's when the invention of talking movies was relatively new. And what kind of propaganda was the United States government using for this new invention called talking movies? They were pumping out a shit ton of propaganda that promoted law enforcement, that promoted sting operations, that promoted organized people in targeting of their targets. And the vast majority of the golden era westerns, for the most part, are doing nothing more than promoting law enforcement and promoting sting operation tactics. And that's pretty much almost all the old westerns back in the golden era were all about. The westerns that have the least amount of sting operation tactics in them are the John Wayne movies. They do have sting operation tactics in the John Wayne movies, but they're like the dumbed-down version, the dumbed-down westerns that they were making back in the 30s and early 40s. People like Bob Steele and Roy Rogers and Tex Ritter. Oh gosh, there's more, and I can't think of them. I can't remember all of them. They were essentially making, under the pretense of being Western movies, they were nothing more than really sting operations. But instead of driving around in cars, they're riding around on horses. But for the most part, the movie is not actually a Western. It's sting operations, and it's promoting law enforcement, it's promoting sheriffs, and it's promoting organized people using covert means to target people. And that's all this movie is. This is just one. This is the most blatant, non-stop sting operations I have freaking ever seen in a movie. Ironically, this movie is never rerun. As a kid growing up back in the 70s, I've never even seen or heard of this movie. I didn't even know who the hell Bob Steele was back in the 70s. They never reran any movies with Bob Steele when I was a kid growing up back in the 70s. So I knew nothing about this movie. Most people in modern day times are completely unaware of the content that's in the old westerns that were made back in the 30s and the very early 40s. You would be surprised to discover that the vast majority of the westerns that were made by Hollywood in the golden era, when talking movies was a brand new technology, and the United States fascist government was trying to figure out propagandistic ways of promoting their fascism. And essentially almost all the westerns that were made, almost, not all, but almost all the westerns that were made back in the 30s and the very early 40s are nothing more than propaganda that promotes law enforcement and promotes organized sting operations and covert tactics. And so I can't recommend enough to people, especially if you suspect you're a victim of a sting operation. If you have any reason to suspect you're a victim of a sting operation, I highly recommend getting some of these old westerns. Avoid the ones with John Wayne, because they're like the dumbed down westerns where they're not really using much in the way of sting operations. The ones with Bob Steele and Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, and Tex Ritter, those are the ones that are the major propaganda westerns that were made in the United States of America that are heavily promoting law enforcement and sting operations. There is some with John Wayne, but John Wayne, for the most part, especially in the 30s and very early 40s, there's propaganda westerns that John Wayne was in where they're heavily promoting law enforcement. But the sting tactics that they're using in those westerns are very minimal. You won't notice very many of them. But the westerns that star Bob Steele, Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, Tex Ritter, and there's more. I can't think of all of them right offhand. But oh my gosh, the amount of sting operation tactics that are in those westerns is amazing. This movie with Bob Steele is the most blatant example of nothing but non-stop sting operations. The fact that they classify this movie as a western is just ridiculous. It's nothing but a sting operation movie where the sting ops are all riding around on horses. In my eyes, that's not a western. It should be classified as organized crime type of a movie, or as a sting operation type of a movie, or as a law enforcement type of a movie. But Hollywood never classifies these movies in that manner. They're riding around on horses, so they call it a western. But there is really nothing about this movie that is a western. It's nothing but sheer sting operations, sting tactics, where one group of organized people is targeting another group of organized people. And both sides, the good guys and the bad guys, are using organized sting operation tactics to screw over and fuck over one another. And that's all this movie is. That's all it is. I've counted literally 26, 27 different separate tactics just in this one movie alone. Just in that one movie alone. The amount of, almost all the golden era westerns have sting operation tactics and the heavy promotion of law enforcement and the promotion of sting operations. They don't refer to what is occurring in this movie as sting operations ever. I don't even think the term sting was even publicly coined until like the late 60s, early 70s. But they're promoting sting operations in this fucking movie. They're trying to make it look normal and justified, and they're trying to make it appear that, well, law enforcement and anybody connected to law enforcement should be permitted to stage 20, 30 crimes in order to pin one crime on their target. As a matter of fact, the good guys in this movie are committing more actual crimes and more stalking than the bad guys are in this movie. For the most part, the bad guys are the ones, for the most part, that are on the defensive, for the most part. And it's the good guys that are staging actually the majority of the crimes and doing all the stalking. Well, not all of it, but the majority of it. Oh my gosh. The amount of sting operations that are in just that one movie is astonishing. People are completely unaware of how to recognize a sting. If you're a target of a sting, you're targeted by people that are taking an interest in you. Just like a dog owner takes an interest in training a dog to do tricks. They've taken an interest in you and are going to devote some time in the targeting of you. They may not spend all day long, every single day doing it, but they will devote 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes per day just to ingratiate themselves into your life, and at the same time to screw you over. Disasters will occur. Bad things will happen to you, and you won't realize that they're both connected. I guarantee you, if you have people that are bending over backwards practically trying to ingratiate themselves to you, and at the same time a bunch of bad things start happening to you that are not normal, I guarantee you they're linked. Your instincts is telling you something's wrong, and your instincts will tell you there's something weird about these people. You should very much listen to your instincts. Your intellect will not warn you at all. You will not recognize it as a sting at all. You have not been conditioned by your school system or by your government or by your news media or by Hollywood to recognize sting operations. And because of it, your intellect will not recognize it. But your gut instincts will nonetheless warn you there's something weird going on. There's something strange about this. You should very much listen to your instincts. It's the first warning sign that you will get. Matter of fact, it's your best warning sign that you would get. Normal people have busy lives. Normal people tend to have a live and let live attitude, and for the most part, your neighbors that are normal people will for the most part leave you the hell alone and not try to overly befriend you or overly annoy you. They're just trying to live their life the same way you try to live your life. And basically, normal people just want to be left alone to live their lives. Sting ops are the exact opposite of that and want to greatly affect and change and screw over their targets. And they want to befriend their targets so that they can get their targets into incriminating situations and to more easily affect or change, usually for the purpose of framing and or fucking over their targets. In my case, in my family's case, we were simply literally being framed for crimes. And the sting ops that were targeting me and my family throughout the entire course of it, we're treating it like a hobby, and we're treating it like it was a sport. And I know for a fact they enjoyed what they were doing. I didn't realize at the time what was going on, but with me and my family, I realized that after the fact when I got older and got wise enough to recognize what was going on. But by then it was already too late. They pretty much had already destroyed my entire family. So by the time I recognized it, it was too late. And for most victims of sting operations, the victims of sting operations don't recognize the signs of it usually until it's too late. And this is one of the reasons why I'm recording this vlog. This vlog is I'm recording with my cell phone. It doesn't give me a warning when it's going to cut off. It just cuts off after like the 60-minute mark. And I don't really have a visible 60-minute mark on here. So I need to point that out because this video might cut off on me in the middle of a sentence. If that does, well then you'll know the reason why. Because my phone doesn't give me really a warning that the video is going to reach its max limit and just auto cut off. So I'm pre-warning you now. If this video ends and I'm in the middle of a conversation, that's the reason why. I'm trying to help victims and targets of sting operations to recognize a sting and to recognize the beginning stages of it. Normally, if you become a target by a sting, the sting operatives themselves will heavily try to ingratiate themselves into your life in such a way where you won't perceive them as criminals, you won't even perceive them as organized, but you will perceive them as weird or odd. Something's not right about these people. You won't be able to put your finger on. Your intellect won't be able to put your finger on it, but your instincts will warn you there's something weird. You won't perceive them as criminals. Your guard won't go up in the sense that, gee, we're being targeted by a sting. The only warning you're going to have really is your instincts is telling you there's something odd or there's something weird about these people. They're overly nice to the point where it's not normal. They seem overly friendly to the point where it's not normal. The type of conversations they try to engage you in doesn't come across to you as normal. It comes across as weird, strange. And you won't be able to put your finger on it because you don't know what their motives are and you don't know what they're planning on setting you up for. And that's the reason why you won't be. That's the reason why you will not be able to put your finger on it. But you will recognize, you will notice immediately that there's something odd about these people. There's something strange, something weird, and that is your very first warning sign. They'll try